Our scripture reading this morning is from Exodus, book 20, chapter 20. Then God spoke all these words and said, I am the Holy of Holies, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Do not worship any gods except me. Do not make for yourselves any carved images or likeness of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters under the earth, and do not bow down to them or serve them. For I, the one who is, am a jealous God, and for the parents' fault I punish the children. The kindness of the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren of those who turn from me. But I show kindness to the 1,000th generation of those who love me and heed my commandments. Do not utter the name of the one who is to misuse it, for the Holy of Holies will not acquit anyone who utters God's name to misuse it. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. For 6 days you will labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath for the Holy of Holies. Do not work on that day, neither you, nor your daughter, nor your son, nor your workers, women or men, nor your animals, nor the foreigner who lives among you. For in the 6 days, the one who is made the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that they hold, but rested on the 7th day. This is why the holiest of holies has blessed the Sabbath day and made it sacred. Honor your mother and your father, so that you may have a long life in the land that the holiest has given to you. No murdering, no adultery, no stealing, no giving false testimony against your neighbor, no desiring your neighbor's house, no desiring your neighbor's spouse or worker, female or male, or ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor.
I think you can go ahead and check off the not desiring your neighbor's donkey. You probably done pretty good with that one. I know that's the one I'm proudest of. So, thank you for being here. It's always wonderful to share the time with you. We're in a series looking at what, in my opinion, has fallen out of the Christian tradition. We've been doing this for some time, but going back and looking at things that were part of the original religion, Judaism, that really helped people keep their sanity. Today we're looking at the beginning of like a longer part of the series where we're looking at the 10 Commandments. And what I want to suggest is that the 10 Commandments are horribly misunderstood in a very destructive way in the Christian tradition to a great extent. That if you look at the actual text there's a prologue to the 10 Commandments. It tells the story of what was happening in Egypt. They were in captivity. They were led out of that. So the backdrop of the 10 Commandments is a movement towards liberation. That the 10 Commandments are not rules to be obeyed so much as the principles that will keep people free. You can look at our nation now and see how the willingness of so many in our nation just to lie and to find truth as whatever Donald Trump says. That you can ignore science, you can ignore history. That renunciation of honesty is destroying our nation. And that was the purpose of these tablets. Not to tell people what to do, but to put them in touch with what makes freedom possible for a people. What makes community possible for people. Now, one of the huge problems that people don't realize is the 10 Commandments were not numbered. The original text was not numbered. So we don't really know how to divide them up. which is really interesting when people from the right wing try to force the Ten Commandments onto the public sphere. They don't realize that they have to choose one of the versions, and they don't usually choose the Jewish version, don't usually choose the Catholic version. They do the sort of American Protestant version. And so when you drop this story, let's look at it for a second. The phrase itself, this is what's sometimes called the prologue. God spoke all these words and said, I am the sacred one. Remember, the first one we looked at was the divine name. Most people don't even know what the divine name is in the Christian tradition. This was incredibly important. This is what Moses hears at the burning bush. So you're not talking about the letters G-O-D, or even these letters that are here. There's a sense of something deeper, more profound happening that Moses is experiencing. And it says, I am the one, the sacred one, the one who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Now, if that's the beginning of the Ten Commandments, then it's really different than what I was taught. What I was taught was the first commandment is no other gods before me. Now, that's kind of a friendly beginning, isn't it? I don't know who God is, but I know my God is right and yours is wrong. So you're already sick. And you think that's the first word that's here. Cram Christianity down everybody's throat. And then God will be happy. The rest of us won't be too happy, but that's the way it goes. We're going to be looking these next 10 weeks at what these principles would mean if we looked at them in terms of liberation. So the prologue is everything you need to know before you take up the Ten Commandments. But the prologue is the context, the background, the story that's unfolding. And we're going to hopefully unpack some of that, because like when you saw the thing about, God is a jealous God, that's not a mature trait, right? Jealousy is not a mature trait. So we need to understand what that word meant in Hebrew. That'll help. And then that it's not saying that God sits there and punishes the children for something the parent did, although it looks like that. But the truth is, abuse does go down through generations. So we're trying to get in touch with this understanding, but not buy into the system of domination that Christianity became. Not to join that religion that consecrates power no matter what. It says because you were born in the United States, you're right no matter what. Or that because you're male, you're supposed to be in charge of something. That we need to unpack these verses if they're going to set us free. The first, let's look at, this is a Jewish version of the Ten Commandments. In the Hebrew tradition, they're not really the Ten Commandments. That's a Christian imposition. It's the 10 words, the Decalogue. And this is an example of how that's celebrated sometimes. I realize you probably are not going to be able to read that very well. It goes what is backwards for us. It's the right way for them, but backwards for us. And you see the same kind of shape in several places. That's don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. But it starts in a very interesting way. It starts with the divine name. That word that you see there, Anaki, means I am. In this version, that is the first commandment. Not no other gods before me, but this revelation. Now, what I think is happening is in the story of Moses, he sees the burning bush, and he understands something about life. He understands that there's some kind of energy being expressed through this bush that isn't just in the bush. It's in everything. and it's in Him. There's a sense in which the divine name is actually that sense within you of the creative principle that brings you into being. There may be a God that does that, or it may be a property of the universe itself, but you are the expression of a creative principle, a creative energy of the universe. You're an expression of that. So the idea that the divine name starts with I am helps you find your reference point, your personal life, and then it expands into the universal. It's a great starting place. I mean, that's all it is. It's a starting place. But you're in a world of hurt if you don't start there. I've mentioned before, when you see those maps, like Six Flags and places like that, and they don't have the little thing that says you're here, you're lost. I mean, you may have a map, but you don't know where you are, which way to turn. It's the same way when you have religion, but you don't know who you are. In some ways, that's worse than not having religion at all. I believe that what Moses experienced at the burning bush is something that you've experienced probably looking at the stars sometime. Sitting there before the ocean and it's throbbing, and you have this kind of sense of life being expressed through you. That experience is the heart of religion, in my opinion. It's about reverence. It's not about obedience. When you look through a microscope and you realize there are patterns there, they're everywhere. When you see something beautiful, a sunrise, sunset, a child being born, a friend dying, those profound experiences are the foundation for the spiritual life. If you start without them, there's going to be a problem for all of us. But that's what most of us were taught. We were taught that there are 10 rules that we're supposed to obey, even if we don't understand them, if they don't make any sense at all, even if they're cruel at times. What if what's being talked about is the creative principle that brings you into being? And saying you need to live your life in harmony with that no matter what. What if that's the first commandment? We're going to look at that more directly next week. So Easter will be another bummer next week, but that's... It's not no other gods before me. What a horrible, horrible beginning to religion. First, you need to know who you are. You need to experience yourself as this expression of a God or of the universe or something. So whatever it is that brings us into being, you are an expression of that. And living out of that principle is like a golden key in terms of the balance of your life. So all over the world, you look at wisdom cultures, they all say, first know who you are. That may be what the first commandment is. It's not a commandment, it's a word, it's a revelation. The 10 Commandments are not rules, they're revelations about how we can stay free and not kill each other, hopefully. Then the second thing I think that putting the prologue back in does is remember that it's a story. It's an unfolding story. You don't have to keep making the same mistakes over and over again. It's understanding that the beginning needs to be disentangled. It's like it's not the answer that's finished. It's the starting place. But you need your mind to finish it. You need your heart. Obedience isn't going to do this. So it's not a call to obedience, it's a call to responsibility. It's not a call to do rituals, it's a call to be creative and artistic. It's not a call to recite the creeds over and over and over again, but a call to be as honest as you can and as aware. And to realize that when you are aware and you're struck by awe, you're touching the heart of the sacred. In the story, God starts talking politically from the very start. Let my people go. That's the most political statement you can make. Right? Worker justice matters. The story of the burning bush is this call to justice, the call to the common life, for caring for each other. So the Ten Commandments are not supposed to make you feel bad for the mistakes you made, but to feel your connectedness to everyone else. So you seek out justice, even if it's not in your benefit. In other words, I try to be as sensitive as I can and not hurt you, not so that I'll be innocent, but so that you'll be happier, so that you can be freer. The weird thing about happiness is it's paradoxical. If I just indulge my tastes, I may wind up less free than before. I may get addicted to something. I may have a habit of something. I may just get lost in the routines of things. Happiness and freedom are actually results of discipline. The great artists are trained to do that. The great dancers are trained to do that. Nature is not free. Like we say, free as a bird. Birds are pretty well wired to just do their instincts. If you're going to get free, then you have to transcend that and find something deeper. What the 10 words are about are the virtues that are helpful in being free and being happy and sharing that together. Now here's the last thing for the morning, and that is that these 10 words, these 10 commandments, are not rules to be obeyed. They're the principles that set you free. This is incredibly important. I was not taught this in church, in school, or in seminary. What are called the 10 Commandments are not rules to be obeyed. They're the principles that would set you free. What parenthood here would want their children just to be slaves? Could love want children to just be obedient and not ask questions and just do what they're told? Love couldn't do that. And so it says in the teachings of the early church, for freedom, Christ has set you free. Now that kind of covers the base, doesn't it? Freedom is the goal, not religion, not obedience. Freedom, happiness, shared joy. So I want to ask you a question. This is what I hope will be the gift for the morning that will hopefully make it worth getting dressed and driving here. I want you to ask as honestly as you can, has religion set you free? Has the religion you inherited set you free? And then I want you to ask, could it set you free? If you've been taught that faith means just believing what you're told, could that ever set you free, even hypothetically? Is repeating somebody's truth ever going to put you in touch with your own heart? Is obeying God out of fear ever going to free you to the greatness that you have, the gift you have to give the world? For many people, religion is a cage. We're so afraid of freedom that we don't know what to do. We talk about freedom all the time. But this is a nation that praised freedom coming out of the gate as it kept slaves. And the church cooperated with that up and down the line. So to realize there is a reformation that needs to take place to get back to what it used to be. And part of that is putting that prologue back in there and realizing that God is not a heavenly dictator to replace earthly dictators. Jesus does not want to be your boss. Love doesn't do that. Love wants you to be free. Love wants you to blossom into totality, to be completely who you are. So when we look at this prologue, it gives us a context for these 10 statements. And we're going to walk through it. Hopefully, this will be a helpful conversation to reclaim some of that. But to realize that the furthest thing from that is to say, no other gods before me. I don't know who God is, I just know mine is better than yours. That will never lead to peace. It will never lead to freedom. So it begins with a kind of a revelation, and to realize that whenever you look at the world in awe and wonder, that's the foundation for your whole life. That is the axis that you're going to build your spiritual life around. Then second, to realize that your life is a part of a long, long story. So even if you don't get to where you think you should, you can be an essential gift to humankind by living with integrity, even when it isn't in your best interest. And then finally, to realize that love does not want you to be a slave or a serf. Love wants you to be free and to learn to love with all of your mind, all of your heart, and with all of your courage. Well, that's my understanding. That's my struggles with the text. We'll look at that. We'll take a moment now for you to think about how you would have preached this passage.